This is a message from your guides reading for the child. So I once again have my lapis lazuli here only. I already mentioned some of the stuff that this was about last week, so I'm just going to go ahead and surround us in some protective space. Okay, so there's something coming up with the throat chakra that they're pointing out. Some kind of block going on in there. Oh, and they're mentioning this person that you had a question about, someone that you had a friendship with and you're no longer friends with her. But you were asking about how to clear and heal better after that. And it mainly feels like it's affecting this area. It feels like it's mainly affecting the throat area, which has to do with your will, your creativity, the way that you present yourself, trusting yourself, and just feeling free to express who you are authentically. And to have the will to create, and even the will to present yourself in an authentic way. It feels like some of that was almost, you can't exactly say taken away, obviously, because nothing can actually be taken away, but it can feel like it is. So almost illusionally so, something can be taken or taken out of us, or dampened or hindered. And it kind of feels like some of those things specifically that has to do with the throat chakra and some of the things that I was just mentioning are directly affected by that. And there is kind of a small thought form in there as well that's coming from that, but it feels pretty small. It doesn't feel like it's substantially developed, because it feels like it developed in this lifetime. And that's how all thought forms start out. So obviously it could grow. It could become more deeply rooted if you were agreeing with it. But you're already really stepping out of that. And I feel like as you're clearing other things, that's just going to kind of come out on its own. Because I don't really feel like that's the basis for any of these things. You know, it's like you can attract something out of the stuff that you already have. Sometimes you can attract something and it can become something else. It can become something much bigger. And then that's why, you know, like your guides will say, oh, well, this goes back to this certain thing. Obviously, if there's some certain thing that some thought form or something goes back to, obviously you still attracted that certain thing to yourself out of something that you had. But still, it's like you can trace back a whole lot of other things to one specific event or one specific relationship or whatever it is. And yes, there is this little thought form that you can easily get rid of. I feel like it's just going to, come out on its own as you're doing other stuff, because even though that's there, it just doesn't feel like this is one of those main things, like so many things go back to that. No, it feels the opposite. It feels like this came to you because of stuff that you already had that was really deeply entrenched, and you've already gotten rid of so much of that old stuff that you were carrying. You're in a much newer energy already, and you're breaking free of a lot of old thought forms and things that you've held on to from past lives and even from this one in your childhood. Those are the more deeply rooted ones, would be childhood and past lives, obviously. But this just, it's kind of a small thing. It came to you out of that. Came to you out of bigger stuff. Even if it seems kind of substantial or it took up kind of a big chunk of your life in a sense, it's not as big as these other things that it actually came out of. It actually came from. So your guides kind of look at that as kind of a small thing, even though it might not seem that way to you because it was like, 10 or 12 years of your life for you. But still, there's this idea that this is kind of small. This idea that it's almost kind of small is something that they would want you to incorporate. It feels like there are smaller things, even if they don't seem that small, but it seems like there are smaller things that kind of can go back to much bigger things or much more deeply rooted things. I don't know why your guides are taking this pause. They're not really talking for a second. Uh, just wait another minute. I feel like they're doing something to your throat. So I know this is kind of different times. I'm feeling this now, so I feel like, who knows? This probably some of this is happening now as well on your end, but I feel like they're going to be doing more of it, a lot more of it, when you're actually watching the reading though. But it feels like they're doing something with your throat. Also the back of your neck here. I feel like there's something deeper in there that attracted that to you. I don't feel like they're working on that little thought form that they mentioned. That isn't a big deal to them. That's supported by other things. And it'll come out immediately, like if it doesn't have that support. And so it's just not, it's just kind of insignificant to them. I also feel like they're kind of moving some chakras around. They're moving them like more into a straight line. It feels like where they're more in line with each other. So some of them are a little bit off balance, not in a line where they should be. But they're showing me a line with like a lot of chakras um, all going straight down. They're not referring to only 7 chakras here for sure. There are a lot of chakras that people don't tend to work on, that you don't tend to hear about, because we tend to go, like, we get our idea of chakras really mostly from like Hinduism and religions like that, where they're really focusing on these specific 7 chakras, and that's this tradition that they teach, that they go by, and that they kind of pass down. So it's passed down through certain religions, and so that's why we have these standard 7. So, and that's something that your guides are pointing out specifically. Um, I've never even really thought of it as being about specifically Hinduism or another religion, but that really is true when you think about it. I hadn't really thought of that. Um, but they're just saying, so realize it's not like it's not like the universal truth or something. It's a system that was sort of passed to humans in a way that they can understand it, that certain religions kind of hold on to that specific way of understanding chakras. And it's good that they are introduced to us, but they're just saying it's not like the truth. So they're saying that this system can kind of just go out the window. Once you're a little more familiar with chakras, so they're saying it's almost like a way to familiarize yourself with the idea of, oh, 7 chakras, I have 7 chakras in my body. They correspond to colors and sounds and, um, different emotional issues or mental blocks, or different strengths, obviously, and gifts. But they're not the end all. So your guides are kind of saying that this is like a beginner's kind of guide in a sense to familiarizing yourself with certain things. And then they're saying, and then to get kind of past that beginner kind of point, it's good to just kind of toss it. And they're saying that that's good for you. That might not be good for like every single person. It's depending on, what they need to bring through specifically, and what they're meant to do with certain information. So some people are meant to use that specifically, and they're going to actually get more out of that. Even if it's not the truth, it's still a truth that they can use for certain purposes to aid them with, whatever it is that they need to learn, whatever it is that they need to clear karmically or in the present lifetime or whatever it is. So your guides are saying that it's definitely a tool that can be used, but they're saying that all of this stuff that you read and that you take in, they're saying to understand that it's a perspective. It's not the perspective. It's not the one and only way to perceive something, but it is a perspective. And so it's right according to that way of looking at things. You can look at it in a different way, though, and you'll have something else that's also right for you in that moment. Or maybe it's wrong, and maybe it's something you need to let go of. It doesn't benefit you. It doesn't serve you to hold that viewpoint, like a viewpoint of yourself. For instance, if it's negative, if you're perceiving something negative about yourself that doesn't really need to be there, you don't really need to see something in that light. Like, you can see that light, and you can see something in that way, and it can be positive for you if you use it to remove something that doesn't serve you. And then you're just looking at it objectively and saying, this is kind of a trait. And you don't even have to use the word negative or positive. You can also simply say, it doesn't serve me. This thing doesn't serve me. It's something that I want to remove about myself. So you can say, I don't like it, but that's because it doesn't serve me. Or you can say, I don't like that about myself, and it's a judgment. It's something that you can't really help, or that you just shouldn't be judging. It's there, and it's perfect, and it's neutral, and you're just perceiving it in a certain way. But in the same way with all of these truths, they're saying everything that you're taking in, all of the information that you take in, and that can be expanded upon within your own mind and your own heart as you take it in and kind of churn it over and play with it. Then you end up with your own perspective of it, your own angle at looking at things that is true for you and that will help others that are meant to be helped by you. So it's not repeating information, it's giving your own perspective of information and then adding your own through that perspective, if that makes sense. And everybody perceives things differently in a different way. And that's why they are a unique piece of the whole. That's why they can bring something to the whole. If we all had the same perspective of everything, the world would be boring and it wouldn't function. Like, what would be the point of everything? You wouldn't need to have different clothing manufacturers, for instance, because everybody would be wearing the same shirts. And everybody would wash their shirts the same way, and everybody would be in the same house, so there wouldn't be any need for any kind of creativity. No, and nobody would say, I like that, or I dislike this, because everybody would just know what they like. They all like the same things. There's nothing to improve on or look at any differently. It's just all one modeled perspective, and everybody knows what it is. They're just saying, we would hate that. Everyone would hate that. You have to go within to find your own truth. Whatever information you're taking in, it has to be true for you. And maybe there are some things that aren't true for you anymore. And maybe they're so not true for you that you don't even remember that they were true for you. Or you can't even tap into that anymore. That's when you know that you've really been removed from a perspective, from an old way of viewing something. You can't even see it as being able to be perceived that way anymore. And then it might even get to the point where you don't even remember that you ever did perceive it that way. Or you're just not conscious of the fact that that was ever possible. Or not the fact. You can't really say the fact anymore because it's not a fact to you. And that's the point of it. It's like you've lost that perspective, which is a good thing. So they're saying that some things are good to lose. And your truth comes from you and your perspective in the moment. So some things might apply to you now that didn't before, and vice versa. And you can always look back on something and you're gonna perceive something new from it. They're even giving the for instance of readings. Like you could go back and you could look at some of these older readings, and now you would have a new perspective on it that you didn't before. Or you might be like, oh, I got through this thing, or now I know what they were speaking about. Whereas before, with that angle, you didn't. And that's okay. And it's like you understand the value of this new perspective now, or you understand the value of even in this, for instance, like older information now. Whereas you didn't see certain aspects of it before. You didn't see like the specific value in some ways of certain details. You know it's all valuable, but not in certain ways that you couldn't see before. You weren't able to see them. They're saying that once you become clear, you can see more and more and more. They're just saying all clarity is a perspective. Everything is a perspective. I don't feel like I'm doing a reading right now. I feel like I'm almost more channeling or something. Sometimes your guides do that. Yours specifically, sometimes it feels like they're more giving a message. I feel like part of it is even because they know they have so many readings that we're doing, that they almost feel like they can also just bring certain, they're saying, valuable information through or teachings through versus just information regarding like do this, do that, even if it's clear this thing or that thing. Sometimes perspective is good, to put things in perspective. And also I think that they are just really loving saying that word right now. They just want to say perspective as many times as possible to give you a perspective on their perspective. So but they're saying, but it's all perspective is the message for this reading. And to really take that in and try and understand that. And you'll look at everything in a clearer way. When you can understand this is just somebody's perspective about anything that you're looking at, or this is just my perspective, no matter what it is that you're observing or that you're looking at, then you can choose how you're going to look at it. That gives you choice. When you really understand that, they're saying that it's very empowering. It's freeing because it gives you the choice, the opportunity to clearly see something. Whereas before you were just stuck thinking that you were almost helpless and perceiving it that way. And then you literally associate it with the thing or the information or whatever it is. It is that way. But it's really not that way. It's you. You perceive it that way. Okay, so that is the end of this reading. That's all that your guides have to say for this week. So thank you very much for another message from your guides. As always, I truly hope that this benefits you. You can perceive it that way. Maybe you won't. Maybe you will. Namaste.